Well, when I started at the Royal Hobart Hospital and actually achieved the recognition of orthopaedic technologist, I found that I had a St John's First Aid certificate, and that's all I had. And I realised after being in the job for a short time that there's a lot more going on inside the body than just a couple of bones in the arm and a couple of bones in the leg. So it was a daunting task. But I did go to the clinical library under the guise of an orthopaedic surgeon because I had his card, and plucked out a book, which is very good for medical students. And if they would like to go to the library and have a look at this book, it is written by John Charnley, and it is The Closed Reduction of Common Fractures. An excellent text to follow to do casting.
Do you find when you meet people, when you tell them what you do, that they think it really is as simple as putting a bit of plaster on a broken bone? Is that a common response?
Yes, well, some people think that anybody can do it, but the other end of the scale is, are you a doctor? Why don't I have a doctor doing this? And my answer to that is, would you get an electrician to replumb your house? Well, the study itself is 6 years. You can only do it through a public institution because that's the only time you would get that turnover of the public that needs that diverse coverage of fractures because, let's face it, the public system copes with the worst scenario in accident format via ambulance, etc. And it's something like 752 hours of clinical work before you can be assessed to be competent in the field of orthopaedic technology.
And has the way you apply casts now changed much from when you started back in 1980?
Yes. Simple operation like most of the ladies would be more familiar with this is having bunions removed. When I first started, we would put a cast on up below the knee. But I devised a method with help from a couple of orthopaedic surgeons where you only put a little cast on like a slipper. So you didn't immobilise that ankle joint because immobilising a joint is very hard for that to get moving after the long time, 6 weeks normally for a wrap-up for the period of time of healing.
And we're actually sitting here in your office now. We've got some boots up there wrapped in plastic as well as boxes full of different things. Can you maybe give me a little bit of a tour and tell me what some of these things are for, Glenn?
The plastic-covered boots are actually moon boots or CAM boots, and CAM is the acronym for Controlled Ankle Management, and I have those for minimal fractures or post-op fractures or any soft tissue damage in an ankle where they don't think that the patient needs fully circumferential casting for that period of rehab. And all of the boxes underneath and the stocking for casts and all the casting material, the underbandage for the casting, and dressings for wounds that go underneath casts, immobilisation with the thumb splints for a mallet finger, knee immobilising splints, limited motion knee braces, there's the collar and cuff slings. And that's just one side of the room, and we have the other side of the room where I have more complicated moon boots, CAM boots, if you like, where they have an anterior splint so that you can actually immobilise a fracture or an ankle replacement, arthrodesis, stiffening of the joint for the period of time. And it can replace a cast in that field. I have ankle braces, wrist braces, wedges for putting inside of boots for Achilles tendon ruptures, tears, post-op, smaller knee braces. There's actually a splint now where you put it into an oven and heat it up so the plastic softens, and then you put it on the arm and you can wind up the tension with a little key, which is just amazing.
Did you ever imagine in 1980 that there'd be such an item?
No, plaster of Paris was probably the only medium. It still is the best medium to use because when you drop it on a limb, it drapes. We did have a fiberglass around when I started in 1980, but water wasn't the catalyst for setting it off. You had to use a chemical for setting it off, and that chemical was not a very nice odour. It would often make people nauseous if they went back to bed and the nurses covered them up because they were cold post-op, because we used to put all of these sorts of things on in the operating theatre as well. I used to go and spend a lot of time in the operating theatre back in those days, helping and assisting with the orthopaedic surgeons, especially with the casting side of things.
And I'm wondering, have you ever actually had to wear a moon boot, or have you ever broken anything yourself?
Touching wood, no, only in a clinical sense, as in teaching. And I've speaking of teaching, I've taught most of the orthopaedic surgeons, the senior orthopaedic surgeons, that is. I've actually taught a lot of them to do casting. The GP fraternity out there are probably up around about the 75% that I've taught casting, and I've only just finished teaching at the GP training college in Murray Street as the wind down to retirement continues. Because
that's how your name came up in conversation at the ABC, that I was told you were up here in North Hobart and that you had some great stories and an amazing career that we could have a talk about. And we haven't even got to any of your stories.
No, some of the stories probably couldn't go to air though, Paul, and maybe there's an opening there for another book, because my first book was published in 1997 and went worldwide as a teaching tool. And it is used in a lot of hospitals as their casting protocol booklet. So that's good. A little old boy from Queenstown has done well again.
It must be incredibly rewarding to be able to write something that is then taken up by your profession worldwide. It was gratifying to find out that it was welcomed so well. But before I did that book, there was nothing available. And when I was doing some teaching in New South Wales, because predominantly in New South Wales the casts are applied by physiotherapists, one of the physios came up to me, one of the senior physios, who was actually one of the tutors, said to me, "Glenn, is there a book that demonstrates blow by blow how to apply a cast for a particular injury?" And I said, "Well, not to my knowledge, but looks like there may be an opening for it." So I sat down and wrote the book and collated a few pictures over a couple of years and had it published in Hull in the UK. And you showed me some figures earlier, and they're over on the other side of your office. But I might just get you to repeat those figures as to how many people or how many casts you think you've applied over your working years.
Yeah, well, since starting in 1980 in the public sector, I worked out roughly that I'd applied about 17,500 casts. And almost in the 15 years that I've had a private practice, I've done nearly 3,500 casts. So it's a lot of people. You'd like to think that this bloke knows what he's doing by now.
I hear that you've been nominated for a pretty special award.
Well, I've been nominated for a Tasmanian Community Award, Paul. Yeah, I'm a bit flattered about that. And one of your colleagues, young Mr. Darryl Peebles, has nominated me, and it was seconded by one of the orthopaedic surgeons who actually proofread my book that was published in 1997.
Good luck with it. And given that I've taken up pretty much most of your lunch hour today, I can't go without asking you for perhaps your favourite story of working in this particular area.
I was the editor of our national magazine, and I used to have an alike page, Laughter is the Best Medicine. But there was this particular lady who decided that she didn't want a waterproof cast on her wrist because she had it down to a fine art. She knew how to have a shower, have a bath, everything like that, go for a swim without getting it wet. And I did say to her, "Look, I'll give you a short period of time, and I'll be awaiting your phone call to say that you've gotten it wet." She rang me within a couple of weeks and said, "Guess what I've done, Glenn?" And I said, "You've got it wet, haven't you?" And she said, "Yes, I have." And I said, "How did you get it wet?" And she said, "Well, I thought I had it down to a fine art. I placed a shopping bag over it, and I did say to her, look, shopping bags aren't all that good because they have holes in it, especially the big hole at the top where you put your groceries in." And she said, "Oh, no. She said, I closed all of that up with a rubber band and then I put Glad Wrap over the top of the whole thing." And I said, "Well, that sounds pretty secure." So how did you get it wet? And she said, I couldn't wash my hair, so I pushed my fingers out through the plastic, and I could knead the hair with the shampoo and conditioner then. It was very funny at the time. And the good thing about it, she could laugh. She realised that she'd done something very stupid. It was great. Loved it.
Glenn, thank you so much for your time this morning. I find it hard to believe that you're actually going to retire and turn your back on all of this, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of people wanting your advice on matters.
Yes, well, look, after almost 40 years, and I hit the big 7-0 this year, so it's time for me to get out and hopefully let someone younger come in and take over from me.
Well, look, thank you again for your time today. Congratulations on a marvellous career, and happy retirement, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Paul.